Welcome to Speak English with me.
Improve your vocabulary, grammar, and pronunciation with our engaging lessons.
Hello everyone, and welcome back to Speak English with me. I'm Sam, and I'm really happy you're here because today we're talking about two tiny English words that cause surprisingly big problems: hear and listen.
And I'm Emma. At first, this topic might sound too easy. You may even be thinking, I learned these words a long time ago. But don't leave just yet, because these two words confuse learners at every level, even people who speak English quite well.
Before we get started, if these conversations help you become more confident in English, we'd love for you to subscribe and follow the podcast. Every new episode is designed to help you speak more naturally, and your support encourages us to keep creating new conversations for you.
I think one reason people mix these words up is because they seem so similar. They both have something to do with sound, so it's easy to believe they're interchangeable.
I used to think that too, until I heard a funny story from one of my students. He was having dinner with an English-speaking family, and someone asked him, "Can you hear the music?" He answered, "Yes, I'm listening it."
Oh, that's such a common mistake.
It really is. Nobody laughed, nobody was confused, and the conversation continued. But afterward, he asked me, "Why didn't that sound natural? I knew both words."
That's the interesting part about learning English. Sometimes knowing individual words isn't enough. You also need to know how native speakers naturally choose between them.
So let's make this simple. Imagine you're sitting in your living room reading a book. Suddenly, you notice a bird singing outside your window.
You weren't trying to notice it. The sound simply reached your ears.
So you can say, "I hear a bird," or "I can hear a bird."
Now, let's change the situation a little. You close your book because you want to enjoy the beautiful sound for a few minutes.
In that moment, you're paying attention.
Right. Now you would probably say, I'm listening to the birds.
That's the biggest idea to remember today. Hear usually happens naturally. Listen happens because you choose to pay attention.
Of course, real life isn't always that neat. There are moments when both words appear in the same situation, and that's where many learners begin to feel uncertain. We'll explore those situations together today.
Here's another example. Imagine your friend is telling you about an exciting vacation. You're smiling, looking at them, and then your phone vibrates. For just a few seconds, your thoughts drift away.
Then your friend stops talking and says, "Were you listening?"
I think we've all experienced that moment.
I certainly have. It's a little embarrassing because you realize you heard their voice, but you didn't really pay attention to what they were saying.
That's why people often say, "Sorry, I wasn't listening."
Notice how natural that sounds. We don't usually say, "Sorry, I wasn't hearing." The sound reached your ears. Your attention simply went somewhere else.
I love examples like that because they happen in everyday life. They're easy to remember.
Here's one more. Imagine you're watching your favorite movie when someone starts using a blender in the kitchen.
Suddenly you say, "I can't hear the movie."
Then your brother says, "Listen carefully, the next scene is important."
Those two sentences work together beautifully. One talks about whether the sound reaches you, the other asks you to focus on it.
As we continue today, don't worry about trying to memorize long grammar rules. Instead, picture these little scenes in your mind. Imagine the people, the places, and the sounds. That's often the easiest way to remember which word feels natural.
And if you've ever mixed up hear and listen, you're in very good company. Every English learner makes this mistake sooner or later. The important thing isn't being perfect, it's becoming a little more confident every time you speak.
In the next part of our conversation, we're going to leave simple examples behind and step into real life. We'll visit homes, classrooms, cafes, busy streets, phone calls, and everyday conversations where these two words appear naturally, and you'll begin noticing the difference without having to stop and think so much.
One place where learners often confuse hear and listen is at home. Family conversations create so many natural examples that you don't even have to invent situations. They're happening every single day.
I agree. Think about this. Your mom calls your name from the kitchen while you're upstairs.
You don't answer because the washing machine is making a lot of noise.
A few minutes later, she walks upstairs and says, "Didn't you hear me?"
And a very natural answer is, "I'm sorry, I didn't hear you."
Nobody would expect you to say, "I didn't listen you." That doesn't sound natural in English.
Now let's change only one little detail. This time you did hear your mom's voice, but you were watching a football match, reading a book, or playing a game.
Then she might smile and ask, "Were you listening?"
Suddenly, the problem isn't your ears.
It's your attention.
That's such a useful way to think about these words. Instead of asking yourself, which grammar rule should I use, ask yourself, what was the real problem?
If the sound never reached you clearly, here is often the right choice.
If your attention disappeared for a few seconds, listen usually becomes the better option.
That little question can help you in hundreds of conversations.
It reminds me of something that happened when I first started working in an office. My manager was explaining a new project and I looked like the perfect employee. I was looking at him, nodding my head, even holding a notebook.
You sound very professional so far.
That's because I looked professional. Inside my head, I was wondering what I was going to cook for dinner.
Oh no.
The meeting ended, everyone stood up, and my manager asked, "Sam, could you tell everyone the deadline?"
Please tell me you remembered it.
Not even close.
That's painful.
I had to admit, I'm sorry, I wasn't really listening.
I like that sentence because it's honest. We all lose focus sometimes. Maybe we're tired, maybe we're worried, maybe our brain decides to think about something completely different.
Have you ever done that?
More times than I'd like to admit. One of my friends tells wonderful stories, but they're very long. Sometimes she'll stop in the middle and ask, "So what do you think?"
That's dangerous.
It really is. There have been moments when I realized I'd heard her voice for 5 minutes, but I couldn't remember the last thing she said.
I think everyone listening has experienced that at least once.
Which is why another useful sentence is, "Could you say that again? I wasn't listening for a moment."
That's polite, natural, and much better than pretending you understood everything.
Let's move somewhere else. Imagine you're sitting in a classroom.
The teacher writes homework on the board while some students are chatting in the back.
One student raises a hand and says, "Sorry, I couldn't hear the homework."
The teacher repeats it and then says, "Everyone, listen carefully because this will be on tomorrow's test."
Notice how both words appear in the same classroom, but each one has its own job.
Here's another place where people hear these words every day. Phone calls.
Especially when the internet connection isn't behaving.
We've all had that conversation.
Hello?
Can you hear me?
You're breaking up.
Can you hear me now?
Nobody says, "Can you listen me now?"
Then, once the connection improves, the conversation changes.
Your friend might say, "Listen to what happened at work today."
That's an invitation to pay attention because a story is about to begin.
I love how English naturally switches between these two ideas without making it feel complicated.
Coffee shops are another great example. Imagine you're meeting an old friend after several years.
The cafe is busy, people are laughing, cups are clinking, and soft music is playing in the background.
Your friend tells you some exciting news, but someone at the next table suddenly laughs very loudly.
You lean forward and say, "Sorry, I didn't hear the last part."
Your friend repeats the sentence.
This time you put your phone face down, make eye contact, and give them your full attention.
Now you're listening.
That's what makes these words memorable. They aren't living inside a grammar book. They're part of ordinary moments that almost everyone experiences.
And the more you connect English to real memories instead of isolated rules, the easier it becomes to speak without stopping to translate every sentence in your head.
I completely agree. Before we continue, we'd love you to think about your own day. Was there a moment when you couldn't hear someone because of noise? Or was there a moment when someone was speaking and your mind quietly wandered somewhere else?
If you can describe those moments in English, even with just 2 or 3 simple sentences, you're already turning today's lesson into real speaking practice.
That's why I always tell learners not to chase grammar first. Pay attention to the situation. Ask yourself what was really happening in that moment, because the situation usually gives you the answer.
I like that way of thinking. It feels much less stressful than trying to remember a long list of rules.
It does. And once you become comfortable with these everyday situations, you'll start noticing that English has a few expressions with hear and listen that look similar on the surface, but mean very different things.
Those are fun because a tiny change can completely change what you're trying to say. You know, one expression that confused me when I was learning another language was the idea that changing just one small word could completely change the meaning of a sentence. English does that too.
It certainly does. A great example is hear about. Learners sometimes think it means someone is talking directly to you, but that's not always true.
Let's imagine I say, I heard about a new Italian restaurant downtown.
That doesn't mean the restaurant called you on the phone.
I hope not. That would be a very unusual restaurant.
It simply means you received some information. Maybe a friend mentioned it, maybe you saw a post online, maybe your neighbor recommended it. The important point is that now you know it exists.
Here's another one. Did you hear about the football match?
Again, nobody is asking if you listened to the commentator for 90 minutes. They're asking whether you've received the news or information about it.
That's a phrase native speakers use all the time.
And once you begin noticing it, you'll hear it everywhere. Friends use it when they're sharing news, families use it when they're talking about relatives, colleagues use it when something interesting happens at work.
Now, let's compare that with another expression, hear from.
That's one of my favorites because it's so useful.
Suppose your friend moved to another country 6 months ago. Someone asks, have you heard from Daniel recently?
They're asking if Daniel has contacted you. Maybe he sent a message, wrote an email, or gave you a call.
So if I answer, yes, I heard from him yesterday, people understand that Daniel got in touch with me.
But listen to how strange this sounds. I listened from him yesterday.
It sounds very unusual because English simply doesn't work that way.
Here's a little trick that might help. When you see hear from, try thinking about communication coming towards you.
That's a nice image.
The message comes to you. You hear from someone.
Let me tell you a story. A few months ago, one of my university friends sent me a message after almost 3 years.
3 years? That's a long time.
It really was. My phone buzzed, I looked at the screen, and I couldn't believe the name I saw.
I love moments like that.
I remember saying to my wife, "You'll never believe this. I just heard from Alex."
That's such a natural sentence. Native speakers use it without even thinking.
Now, there's another expression that often surprises learners, hear of.
That's a little different because it doesn't mean you've met someone.
Right. If I ask, have you ever heard of Marie Curie? I'm not asking if you've spoken to her.
That would be impossible.
I'm asking whether you know who she is.
Maybe you've read her name in a book, maybe your teacher mentioned her, maybe you watched a documentary. You recognize the name even if you don't know many details.
Here's another example. I've never heard of that movie.
Which simply means it's new to you.
I like putting these expressions side by side because they're easy to compare.
Let's do that.
I heard about a new cafe.
Someone gave you information.
I heard from my cousin.
Your cousin contacted you.
I've heard of that singer.
You recognize the singer's name, but perhaps you've never listened to a single song.
Wait, that's an interesting sentence.
Which part?
You can say, I've heard of that singer, and then immediately say, but I've never listened to their music.
That's a wonderful example because both verbs appear naturally in the same conversation, and each one has a completely different purpose.
Here's another situation. Imagine 2 colleagues are talking during lunch.
One says, have you heard about the new manager?
The other replies, only a little. I've heard of her, but I've never worked with her.
Then a third colleague joins the conversation and says, well, listen to what happened in yesterday's meeting.
That's such a realistic exchange.
And notice something else. Nobody in that conversation is stopping to think about grammar. They're simply choosing the words that match the situation.
I think that's an important goal for every learner.
I agree. We all start by memorizing rules, and that's completely normal. But after a while, you want those rules to become experiences. When you remember a conversation with a friend, a phone call from a family member, or someone sharing exciting news, the language becomes much easier to recall.
That's probably why personal stories stay with us much longer than grammar tables.
They do. Our brains remember people, emotions, and moments. So every time you learn a new expression, don't stop after reading one example. Try connecting it to your own life. Ask yourself, when was the last time I heard from someone I hadn't spoken to in a long time? Or have I ever heard about a place that I really wanted to visit? Suddenly, the vocabulary isn't just English anymore. It becomes part of your own story.
You know what I find interesting? At the beginning of today's conversation, we were talking about 2 very small words. Now it feels like those two words have opened the door to dozens of everyday situations.
That's one of my favorite things about language. A tiny difference can make your English sound much more natural, not because you're using difficult vocabulary, but because you're choosing the word that fits the moment.
Let's imagine a few quick situations and see what feels right.
Sounds good.
You're walking through a park. A child points to a tree and says, "Dad, I can hear a bird."
Perfect. The child notices the sound.
Then the father smiles and says, "Be quiet for a second. Listen to it."
Now he's inviting the child to focus on the sound.
Here's another one. You're studying at home when your friend sends you a message.
It says, "Have you heard about the concert next month?"
You reply, "No, tell me more."
A few minutes later, your friend sends a voice message.
And now you're listening to the voice message.
See how naturally those expressions fit together?
They really do.
Here's one for our listeners. Imagine you're in a restaurant with 3 friends. The waiter comes over, but someone at another table drops a tray.
It makes a huge noise.
Your friend asks, "What did the waiter say?"
I'd probably answer, "I didn't hear him."
Good. Now imagine the waiter repeats everything, but this time you're busy reading the menu.
Then my friend could smile and say, "Sam, listen, he's asking what you'd like to drink."
That's it. Same restaurant, different situation, different verb.
I think many learners believe they have to memorize hundreds of rules, but often it's more helpful to picture real life.
I agree. If you can imagine the scene, the words usually become much easier to remember.
Before we finish, let's play a tiny challenge.
I like these.
I'll describe a situation, and everyone listening can quietly choose the word before Emma answers.
Let's do it.
You're waiting for an important phone call. Your phone rings, but the connection is poor, and the other person's voice keeps disappearing.
I'd say, "Sorry, I can't hear you."
Nice. Here's another one. Your best friend says, "I have something important to tell you."
Then I'd stop what I was doing and say, "I'm listening."
One more. Your colleague asks, "Did you know that our company is opening a new office?"
I might answer, "No, I haven't heard about that."
Last one. Someone asks, "Do you know who that author is?"
I'd say, "Yes, I've heard of her, but I haven't read any of her books."
I hope everyone listening noticed something. None of those answers required difficult grammar.
They didn't. They required understanding the situation.
That's a much friendlier way to learn English.
It also helps you feel less nervous. Instead of searching for a rule, you simply ask yourself what's happening. Is sound reaching me? Am I paying attention? Am I receiving news? Is someone contacting me? Do I recognize a name?
Those questions can guide you to the right expressions surprisingly often.
Before we say goodbye, let's have our word tour.
Our first expression is hear about.
It means you receive information or news about something. For example, I heard about a new cafe near my office.
Next is hear from.
Someone contacts you. I heard from my cousin yesterday.
How about hear of?
It means you know that a person, place, or thing exists. I've heard of that book, but I haven't read it.
Next is listen to.
Give your attention to a sound, a person, music, or a podcast. I like listening to music while I cook.
Then we have listen for.
This means you're waiting to hear a particular sound. For example, listen for your name at the airport.
Another useful one is listen in.
That means to secretly listen to someone else's conversation. It's usually not considered polite, so use it carefully.
Here's a phrase you'll hear everywhere. Pay attention.
It doesn't mention sound at all, but it's closely connected to listening. Teachers, parents, and managers often say, "Please pay attention."
Then there's tune out.
That's when your mind drifts away and you stop paying attention, even though someone is still speaking. I think we've all done that at least once.
Finally, catch what someone said.
This doesn't mean catching something with your hands. It means understanding or hearing the words. You can say, "Sorry, I didn't catch what you said. Could you repeat it?"
I love that expression because you'll hear it in everyday conversations all the time.
Me too. And here's something I'd like everyone listening to remember. Don't worry if you mix these expressions up once in a while. Every conversation teaches you something. Every mistake gives you another chance to notice what sounds natural. Progress isn't about speaking perfect English every day. It's about feeling a little more confident than you did yesterday.
Thanks for spending your time with us today. We hope these examples, stories, and conversations help you notice, hear, and listen in a completely different way the next time you're speaking English.
Take care of yourselves, keep enjoying the language, keep speaking whenever you have the chance, and we'll be here for another friendly conversation before you know it. Until then, have a wonderful day and happy learning.